and listeners and folks out there in general that are first-time listeners perhaps to People for People Radio, welcome. I'm Santos and I'll be with you for the next 2 hours. So we did have a scheduled guy to talk with us, and that didn't happen. That was from the Free Thought Project. Anyway, so since I'm in Mexico hanging out with Charlie Freak from Freak Sense Radio, he's just living probably about 5 blocks down the road from where I'm staying, and we've been hanging out each day, and we've done a podcast already at his place dealing with veganism or plant-based diet, call it that, probably better. And we discussed the virtues of that diet in the Ascension program and how for spirituality this is the ultimate diet, bar none. And so we did that, and we got that out with Jason X. And so I'm happy to welcome Charlie on this show. So welcome, Charlie.
Hi, Santos. Absolute pleasure as always, my precious friend.
Yep, great. Likewise. So we chose the title of the right-hand path and the left-hand path for this talk we're going to have, and we're going to talk about the two ways. Yes, there are 2 paths you can go by, but in the long run, there's still time to change the road you're on. In the long run, well, that's talking about in the lifetime of the individual. There is time, of course. There is no impatience in the universe. There's always time. But should we choose in one lifetime to take the left-hand path, we shall go to the left. That would be our reward and our destiny. But should we choose in this lifetime to go to the right-hand path, the rewards will be from the right. And so, yeah, this is why Jesus says, when I come back into my kingdom, I will separate the sheep from the goats. The sheep will go to my right into everlasting bliss, and the goats shall go to the left, and they shall go to everlasting damnation. Well, that's basically saying that those ones are not ready yet, and they will have to go around and round, they'll have to reincarnate, they'll have to share in the same experiences. And of course they said in the East, they taught that the moment you die, should you get hit by a bus, you will be very unfortunate, because if you're still doing things of lust, gluttons will not inherit God's kingdom, greedy, liars will not inherit God's kingdom, cheats, unfaithful people, disloyal, left-hand pathers, all kinds of people who practice degeneracy, and it's saying that these things will not inherit God's kingdom. Well, the kingdom of God is within. So the individual is thwarting his own rewards and blessings by making decisions in their course. There's no room for lukewarm, as Jesus says to Laodiceans. He says, either you are cold or you're hot. Make up your mind, because you're not gonna bluff me. I'll vomit you out. You will be vomited out of the whole cycle, and you will be repeating and repeating again. So whatever you're doing at that moment of death, that is the plane to which you will always go. You cannot climb higher than that barrier. These are portals that must be opened. And they are portals that the Baphomet is teaching when he's pointing to the right-hand path. His right-hand arm is lifted up toward the waxing white Isis moon, and his left arm is pointing down to the dark, black, waning Nephthys moon, and indicating that there is fusion and there is fission. There is radiation and there is gravitation. There is up and there is down, and there is Jacob's. And so, are you ascending on that ladder, or are you descending? So, what an appropriate theme for the days that we're in, Charlie, because there are many programs running and there are many, many people who are following those programs, even people who have left the right-hand path. They are now happy, 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 all on the left, all their company knows, all eaters, humanized alcoholics, upside-down spinning types, and they are happy, 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 happy in that dark world. You know, they've just left synchronism just like that, bang. And I'm going to talk about the parable of the sower in a minute, because obviously these people had very shallow seeds, and they fell amongst the rocks, and the sun came and burnt them up and withered them, and they fell back to their previous states of being. And down the slippery left-hand path they go, down into hell. Hades and hell is awaiting them, and they're burning with passions right now and burning with lusts, and they cannot satiate anything because they're living in the world of pleasure and pain, for they do not know bliss, and they have never meditated or stayed still and embraced the bliss. So it's a slippery slope, as they say, and the path to everlasting damnation, the road to everlasting perdition, is broad and spacious, and many are the ones on it. But the narrow road leading to everlasting glory is cramped and tight, and few are the ones finding it. So it is battle, as it says in Ephesians. We have to put out our complete suit of armour, not take it off and have a holiday. It's a war, and it's a war that must be won and will be won by the ones who follow the gospel leadings, which says, "Take courage, for I have conquered the world." And to conquer the world, we must conquer the world in us. That the world must not dominate us. And we must be in service to truth, always, not hiding in the dark, but out there, serving our brothers, in service. If you're not doing that, you're in service to self. And service to self people are polarized to the earth. Once you polarize to, as Manly P. Hall says in his Buddhic the fifth podcast on the different Buddhic bodies and the Atman and all of this beautiful philosophy, says once we are inverted to the polarization of the sun, then we become givers and saviors. And those who are polarized on the left are the sinners, the mooners and the earthers, and they are stuck. The moon sends them back as monsters and demons and monkeys and all kinds of demonic entities linger with them as they reincarnate and have to, shed their demons. So rather than doing that, a lot of people have gone on the left-hand path collecting demons. As they go, more and more entities possess them, and more they become delusional, neurotic and psychotic. And hence depression, suicide, self-hate, jumping from partner to partner, seeking polyamorous experiences, pornographic, promiscuity, and all kinds of anything goes because it's fun. So for fun, they do what the foolish virgins did, which was to burn up their oils, their chrism. They lose their charisma, they lose their Christ, the light is gone. And they squander it in illicit fornications, ejaculating to the left, ejaculating to the right. And so they know no limits, that. And then, of course, this leads to other things. Then there's, sadomasochism in sex, or there's, heavy drug taking. Let's get, real heavy drug taking in sex. And then there's pornography, there's pedophilia, and then there's bestiality that leads to that. And then there's snuff movies and all kinds of seeking more thrills, because the left-hand path does not reward and satisfy. The rewards are fleeting, but the satisfaction is zilch, empty, zero, death of the individual. The right is the path of life. which is sense, fusion and fission. We're not fusing. We are in fission mode. That's the rapture. We get raptured with the Lord. We get taken up to the higher chambers. As you said, Charlie, the other day, it's beautiful. The Kundalini, at the base, B, you have the base of the Kundalini, and at the top, G, you have God in the upper room. The G-room, the groom, which will be wed with the bride, who is down below at the base, and you take a ride with the bride up the chakras, and you go to the upper chamber, the upper room, to be with the groom. And this is the alchemical wedding. So it's always in the words. And thanks for sharing that one with me, Charlie. That's just the absolute gem. Thank you. You might want to jump in.
You're so welcome. I call it the the B ride to the G room, and like you say, it's just symbology for the alchemical marriage between the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine. And it's the journey it's the hero's journey. It's the one story. It's syncretism. And that's the beauty of, just jumping in and doing the show today on red shift, blue shift, left-hand path, right-hand path. Left-hand path is wide, and it's featured within the mainstream. And everywhere you look, that path is wide, and it's paved with streets of materialism. And the many will take it, and I guarantee you it leads to a precipice, and you won't find out until you take that last step and you're falling and falling and falling and you can't get up. That's the reality. When you fall and you can't get up, then you're a victim, and victims just go around and around and around the wheel, the samsara. And if that's what you want, then have at her. I'm sure that I've done that a lot in my experience, and like yourself, Collywog and I are just completely dedicated to not ever going around the wheel again. We want to be the mastars of our fate, of our reality, and the only way to do that is going within. I need to save you hundreds of dollars. Within a very famous Steely Dan song, Kid Charlemagne, completely alchemical song. That's all Steely Dan wrote about. Everybody thinks at one level they're all just heavily drug songs, and of course at one level they are, because they're talking about red shift, blue shift. But in every single Steely Dan song, what you maybe hear and connect, because that's our reality, going to a public school and growing up in the mainstream, that's all you know is redshift. So you pick up the drug references right away, and you convince your mind that's all they're talking about. But when you start to go within, and when you start to learn through the most brilliant teachers in the history of mankind, like Santos, then you begin to learn that everything is actually emergent, and that is an inner force that is created within and is released outwards. So all life is created within and is generated outwards. That's reality. And through Santos, you learn these things, and you find that from within we generate without. So the question is there gas in your car? And that's kind of like a modern analogy for, is there oil in your lamp? And this is, in the story that Santos was talking about within the Bible of the 10 virgins, there were 5 foolish and 5 with wisdom. And those with wisdom brought extra oil in their lamps, because when they went to the house of the groom, the G room, he wasn't there. And you never know when the master of the G room will be there. So you have to wait. And that's why you need to have copious amounts of gas in your car or oil in your lamp. And they waited, and when the groom returned to the G room, they were permitted in. And they entered into this holy bliss, not pleasure and pain of the left path, the wide path that the many will take and fall off a precipice and go around and around and around, but the eternal path, the one that is straight and narrow. And it becomes so straight and narrow, like Santos teaches, that after a certain point, there's no turning around. You've done so much of the work that even if you don't make it through this pass or this go, you don't go back to the beginning. You don't go back to the start, forgetting everything as yet another newborn baby that just finds themselves getting birthed into worse and worse and worse situations with worse and worse and worse parents. And the choice is yours. And the right-hand path that Santos talks about is all about having oil in your lamp or gas in your car. And that only gets done by doing the work. And there are so many things that I'm sure we'll touch upon in the show today that are the bastions of what this work is, the cornerstones of who we truly are. And it's all, I find it's so amazing because it's all just so commonsensical in terms of who we are and what it is that we're supposed to do. All we need to do is just breathe, control our breathing, relax, still the mind, and all this stuff is just common sense. So with that, let me pass it back over to you. And just applaud you again for being the master teacher on the fact that while we're living what appears to be this solid physical realm, the truth is that the basis of everything is an alchemical world of metaphysics, and it's all within you.
Whoop. Sorry. I'm mute. Okay, so this segue is really good, Charlie, into what I wanted to say. Can you hear me?
Yes.
And what I want to talk about was the parable of the sower. And thanks for the kind compliments, brother, but hanging out with you in the last 3 or 4 days, I've seen that your syncretism is top shelf. I particularly like that last one I just shared with everyone about the B ride to the G room, And that's what it is, from the number 2, duality, the letter B, to the number 7, G7. And there are 7 chakras to get there to the groom in the top room. And so you got to take that ride. And you got to, like the Queen of Sheba, she went up from the south to visit King Solomon, from the land of Sheba, where no one knows where that land is. And you've got people on the National Geographic Channel looking for Sheba on the earth. It'll be everywhere. I mean, where do you find Eden? Well, you go to Sweden. Where do you find the Holy Land? You go to Holland. Where do you go to find the land of Venus? Venezuela. I mean, it's all the Holy Land. Or where do you want to go to worship the Egyptian Trinity of Israel? Let's go. Isis, Ra, and El. Thank you. So, segues really well into the parable of the sower, Matthew chapter 13. The letter M, the 13th letter. So, here it goes. It says, and it's talking about 4 classes of people. 4 types of seed get sown every time a sower goes out, And especially if there's tough soil and rocky soil and weedy soil in amongst the good. So you always get better tomatoes where the good soil is growing, and you always get bad tomatoes where there's, a lot of rocks or so not enough water or whatever. So it always works that way, and this is how the parable goes and is explained. Why some people endure in the path on the right and some do not, and they are like the wind, like the chaff in the wind. They know not who they are or where they are going. So that same day Jesus went out of the house and sat by the lake. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat in it, while all the people stood on the shore. Then he told them many things in parables, saying, a farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Still, other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop, 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. Whoever has ears, let him hear. The disciples came to him and asked, "Why do you speak to people in parables?" He replied, and there you go, by the way. There's your scripture if you want to show that the Bible is parables and Jesus speaks in parables, because that's how truth is hidden from the unwise. You know? When you're speaking about the birds and the bees and your children are listening, you want to hide the true meaning of it, because otherwise it might cause a different dynamic between you and your children. So you'll say parables, and the children think you're literal birds and bees, you see. He replied, "Because the knowledge of the secrets of the kingdom of heaven has been given to you, but not to them." Hey, you might want to mute that mic while, so it doesn't get recorded. Charlie?
Yeah, I know.
Just hit the mute button.
I will.
Because whoever has... So because the knowledge of the secret... This is interesting, isn't it? He replied, "Because the knowledge of the secrets of the kingdom of heaven has been given to you, but not to them." So that's the churchgoers. Whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. This is why I speak to them in parables. Though seeing, they do not see. Though hearing, they do not hear or understand. In them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah. You will be ever hearing, but never understanding. You will be ever seeing, but never perceiving. For this people's heart has become calloused. They hardly hear with their ears, and they have closed their eyes. Otherwise, they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn, and I would heal them. But blessed are your eyes because they see, and your ears because they hear. For truly I tell you, many prophets and righteous people longed to see what you see, but did not see it, and to hear what you hear, but did not hear it. Listen then to what the parable of the sower means. When anyone hears the message about the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in their heart. These are the people who, you talk to them about the way the world really goes, you know. We're living on a plain net, not an upside-down spinning Santa ball. And that what they do, they shut their ears. They do not understand. Oh, go away with your silly theories. And the evil one comes and that anything good that they had was now totally snatched. This is the seed sown along the path. The people who are not following the path, on the left-hand path, that is. The seed falling on rocky ground refers to someone who hears the word and at once receives it with joy. Oh, syncretism is the best. Oh, how I love it. I'll never leave it. I will always be devoted to the gods and syncretism. But since they have no root, they're hypocrites, they last for only a short time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the word, they quickly fall away. So trouble would mean they're full of lust, and persecution would mean it's too difficult to do the right-hand path. So because of the word, because that's the word of God, and they quickly fall away. Oh, they fall away. The seed falling among the thorns refers to someone who hears the word, but the worries of his life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, making it unfruitful. But the seed falling on good soil refers to someone who hears the word and understands it. This is the one who produces a crop, yielding 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. Then another parable, the parable of the weeds. So that was the sower, and then followed immediately by the parable of the weeds. These are just two of the best parables. And we'll go into what it means. I've already done it a little bit, but I'll go more extensively, because this is what's going on in the world. There's poor seeds and many, many weeds. Seeds of poor souls who are being lost and deceived in amongst the weeds, who come and snatch their goodness away, and everything they work for is stolen by Satan in one fell blow. Jesus told them another parable. The kingdom of the heavens is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while everyone was sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. When the wheat sprouted and formed heads, then the weeds also appeared. The owner's servants came to him and said, "Sir, didn't you sow good seed in your field? Where then did the weeds come from?" "An enemy did this," he replied. The servants asked him, "Do you want us to go and pull them up?" "No," he answered, "because while you are pulling the weeds, you may uproot the wheat with them. Let them grow together until the harvest. At that time, I will tell the harvesters, first collect the weeds and tie them in bundles to be burned, then gather the wheat and bring them into my barn." So, you see, this is all about seeds and weeds. And the bad seed that people are sowing is the seeds of lust. For lust, people have given up everything. And like that Air Supply song, oh no, not Air Supply, "You've blown it all sky high, I gave you love." Remember that one?
Not off the top of my head.
Yeah, anyway, I'm singing it in totally out of key probably, and way lower. They were really, really high. And then it says, "But you've blown it all sky high," And it's talking about how, people have just made disastrous choices in their life, pitiful choices, tragic, absolutely tragic, for not having the right soil, So soil is soul, same word. Oil, the oil is under the soil. That's why big oil always goes under the soil, under the sea, to get the oil. And the soil is the soil of the soul. Sol invictus, your soul. And so if you don't have a good soul, well then you don't have good soil. And it's no use projecting from your heart that you're happy and you're virtuous, when your soul, the higher aspect of the heart, is in absolute disarray and totally found wanting and lacking. As the mind pretends to be as noble as the spirit, but it is not. So the heart, the outward appearance of people, their personality, they appear to be happy in the world, you see. Oh, like the prodigal son, away he went, it was boring back home, his father's kingdom was just too boring. I want to go out, there's prostitutes out there on the left-hand path, there's alcoholics and demonic friends that I can have or can surround me with, and upside-down boyfriends that they... Oh my God. I can't even stand to think, I wouldn't stand to be in the same room as a Globy. I can't imagine how you could leave syncretism and end up with someone who's an upside-down spinner, and yet I've seen this with my own eyes, Charlie. I've seen it with my own eyes, and more, and many more things this individual is, ghastly, drug addict, alcoholic, and these are people who are on syncretism's path. I've seen this many times, vegans supposedly for 20 years, and all of a sudden, no, it didn't work. So down they go to eat a little bit of bum, because now they feel good. It's good to murder animals and to enjoy their bums, because it tastes nice and it gives you protein. Whereas protein you can get for 100 calories, 12.5 grams in broccoli and only 6.2 in beef. So why the murder? for protein? You're looking for protein? Eat broccoli. There's plenty of broccoli that doesn't have to get its heart ripped out and it's crying away from its mother and the mother's aching for the little children. That's the left-hand path, sweethearts. All of you folks who think, you're going to ascend. You can't be eating bums because you are what you eat, and bums don't get into God's kingdom. I'll have to add that sentence into the Bible somehow. So,
well, and you said such a key word there, and that word is think. And so much of what you're saying about these left-hand pathers and the prodigal son, and you're talking about descending upon whores and alcohol and drugs, etc. So much of this is simply still just a metaphor. They're all simply allegories, ultimately, because the greatest sin that we ever commit is in doubting that everything is beautiful and is blissful. Very logically and very quickly, we exist within a creation. And if like Santos just said, if you're an upside down, spinning around, twisting, tilting, turning globalist, you're lost, and you absolutely probably won't get any of this. But the fact of the matter is, if you again calm your mind, still your mind, and just logically relax, it's so obvious that this creation is no accident, and it's not a series of coincidences. It is elegant design beyond description. And so that is from a creator that is beautiful and loving. So at the very base, be as I see, the basic understanding or understanding to our reality is that if you didn't do anything, you just stilled yourself and simply became an observer to what is, you would ultimately see and connect with all things that are God, because this is God's creation. And God's creation isn't evil. It isn't filled with problems. And it isn't filled with horrible, rotten people and terrible experiences, and there's not much you can do. You're just a victim. You were born into this shitty world, and the best you can do is try to get by. And that's what we're taught. That's the left-hand path, and that's what we're taught from the out there, what I call organized society, because the few need to rule the many. So it's just all a composite of lies. But the truth is that God's creation is beautiful, loving, connective, all is a tomb. And everything is where it should be, and that we are constantly perfect physical avatars for what's happening inside of us. So whenever we do take the time to look in the mirror, that's whatever you see is what's happening inside of you. And ultimately that's a choice, because as we discussed earlier, all life is an emergent property. No matter what they tried to tell you about it, all of this has been around for billions and billions of years, and everything came out of nothing, and all you can do is your best to try to get along. That's bullshit. You exist, and you are the captain of your ride. You have the captain's eye within you, and you can control your ride by seizing the captain's eye, and that means gaining perspective. And all that we gain perspective when we learn to trust. And over the last few days, you and I have been talking a lot about various classic rock songs, and how in the 60s and 70s they were just loaded with very, very powerful, important truths. And none more than Robbie Robertson from the band and their famous song, The Weight. The opening line of the song is, I rolled into Nazareth and I was feeling about half past dead. And that if we're really awake, that kind of gives it away. And then the rest of the song is all just filled with biblical allegories. But the chorus, which keeps playing back against all of these carnal verses of our reality, is take a load off Fanny, which is our sacred mother below us, below the Fanny, the physical redshift Earth, and put the load right on me. And the load is all of our problems, all of our worries, all of our suffering, and putting it on to the trust or the shoulders of God, who can handle all things, as he is the creator of all things. And so all it takes is trust. And if we trust that there is a creator, and if we trust that creation is beautiful. I mean, how do we not get this when, if you just take a deep breath and observe all around you, it's perfect harmony, balance, and that God provides everything for us in total abundance, no need for money. No one can own land. So all those fields filled with all of these beautiful green foods that are coming from the white light of the golden sun, everything is already created. There's nothing new under the sun, and it's all there for us in abundance, and it's all free. And all that takes to be able to powerfully connect with that is just trusting. It's just trusting that creation is beautiful and it's benign and that it's eternal. And once you do that, then actually all the things that Santos talks about really aren't that difficult to discover, and they're not that difficult to discern. So everything that has been taught to us, and it's not just the Bible, it's the Bhagavad Gita, it's the Quran, it is the Egyptian Book of the Dead. All of these ancient texts are all written in parables. And as Santos said, there are a variety of reasons for that. One of the most important reasons is that once you learn one of these fantastical metaphors, you won't forget them, because they are quite fantastical. Jonah and the whale. There was no one in the Holy Land roaming around named Jonah, and he didn't fall into a big fish. Nobody did that. But it's an allegory for going within. 3 days he spent in the depths of this grand fish. Well, that's why there's a king's chamber, a queen's chamber, exactly where, in relation to the central chamber of the Great Pyramids at Giza, that perfectly match the interior of the human brain and the optic thalamus with the pineal gland and the pituitary gland. It's all put there for us. Everything is pointing the way for us. And all we need to do to be able to gain access to this eternal, brilliant, life-giving, alkaline, green, golden creation of God is to just trust. Because when we think, we are taking ourselves out of the singularity of God's creation, and we are living, as Santos brilliantly discussed earlier and describes in all of his syncretic teachings, that we are the fallen man into the world of the ultimate polarity, and then all of the levels of duality between the poles of our experience. And that is a choice, and it comes by taking thought. What does Christ say throughout the Bible again and again and again and again and again? Take no thought for your life. And then people will say, Charlie, but what are you trying to tell me? I'm driving in a car down the highway and I've got my precious children in the back seat, and you don't want me to think? Precisely. Because when you are thinking, that's the mother driving down the highway at 80 miles an hour with her two precious children in the back seat and just zoned out because she's got more problems than she ever could possibly deal with, and then suddenly snaps to attention and goes, holy shit, where have I been for the last 3 minutes? And I've been driving down the highway with my children in the car for the last 3 minutes. That's the thinker. That's what happens when you think. That's what happens when you live in the left hemisphere of your brain, the dying brain, Satan's world the fallen Saturn wearing the crown of Kronos, and everything is based upon time, and we got to get there because it starts at this time and ends at that time, but I don't get the blah, blah, blah. That's your reality when you think. When you take no thought, thought is replaced by two senses that nobody seems to want to talk about. So where everybody knows about the five physical senses, well, there are seven senses, but nobody seems to know sixth sense and seventh sense. And these are intuition and telepathy. And they come from within. And here's the really cool thing about trusting in God and God's creation is that everything that you need to know comes to you, and not a moment too soon, but never a moment too late. It arrives precisely when it means or needs to arrive. And that's what you get when you relax, when you calm your brain waves out of that insanity, ping, 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 up and down of the beta. Hey, we got a free version of new software. Yeah, do you want to try it? Huh? Yeah. You want to get some new free software? It's called beta. And it's broken, and it's going to cause you to think and go crazy, and your brain's just going to go up and down like absolute maniac and a lunatic, because that's how the few control the many. But when you control your breathing, when you take no thought, your brain waves drop, and they drop fast, and they drop right through alpha and theta, and they drop right down into delta. And then if you can do a little work, and if you have a clean soul and a clean body and mind, then you can achieve what's called gamma waves, those little M's, blue M's up high in the higher mind, the higher brain. And these gamma waves begin to turn the wheel of the only real clock that exists. And that's the clock within you, inside the third ventricle of your brain, which is the swastika, the golden swastika, the Big Dipper going around the North Star Polaris, the pole star, and it spins in a clockwise direction, up and to the right, with a huge ladle open to receive the gifts of God, and then it comes down and it blesses us with these gifts, and then it goes back up. And that's called eternal bliss, constantly receiving the gifts of God, versus what Santos said about thinking for yourself, worrying and screwing things up perpetually, and your cup is never full. You don't have gas in your car. You don't have oil in your lamp. And you are constantly turning your cup upside down and not receiving any of these gifts from God. You're constantly out of time. You're constantly out of money. You're constantly out of abundance, because that's the wide path that the many will take, that looks bright and shiny to the left. And it's all a choice. And it all comes down to just take the load off of Fanny, get the load off of our puny, minuscule shoulders, and put this enormous weight onto God. That's what he's asking. That is the crucifixion. That's crucifying the dime brain, the 10%. That's tithing that God talks about, that is talked about Melchizedek in the Bible. It's all just an allegory. It is the collection of the carnal left mind. Give me your broken carnal left mind, and I will give you the world. And the world is the 90% of the right brain. And with that, I'll pass it back over to you, my friend.
Yeah, so, and this is the onerous responsibility that we have, to not fall back in a former state, but always be excelling into better states. Put on the new personality, as the scriptures say. Always put on the new personality. It's not speaking about the lower ego personality, but a new personality, which means a better, transformed one every day. New. The key word there is new. Your personality needs to be renewed, or it needs to be perfected, you know. A lot of people do not see the rough edges that they have around them, you know, or the the gaping holes where they are hypocrites or where they are weak and do not stand for anything. You know, do they stand for truth, or do they, compromise because they've got a big audience, so they only teach partial truths? And that's not going to get them anywhere, nor the people that listen to them.
Exactly.
So we have this cross that we must bear. Our body is a cross, and we all have a certain amount of responsibility, or at least an input into the whole of everyone awakening and our individual selves. If we're lazy and we think, no, that's not up to me, I don't care, then we're not contributing to the whole, right? This is where people get confused with the community-minded spirit and the more selfish, self-centered unit. Promoting the unit or the collective, right? There's always this war. Well, you are both. You are both. We are, and we have a responsibility, because whatever is in there is out there. Whatever is out there is in there. And so to some extent we are co-creating this. So we cannot, we cannot put down our arms and our armour. We must always be ready to fight the fine fight, and to win and conquer the world. And because as it says in Mao Zedong, in the Art of War, that to win a war is to win so that no one is hurt. That's winning a war, So this can be done by the individual who's on the right-hand path. Right-hand path simply means ascending, up and in. Jesus of the Sacred Heart is always pointing to his heart and upward. And that is because you go up and in, or in and up, not down and out. The down and out are the downtrodden.
That's right.
They are the ones who are descending down and out in the world, lost, like the little sheep of the tribe of Dan, of Israel, the lost children of Israel. So the diaspora. And so to bring back the little children of Israel, we have to go in the heart. That's where he's pointing. And then he's pointing upward. That's up to the Lamb of God, the heart and the Lamb. That's where the groom is, the G room, the God room. And the B-ride is down at the bottom, and she's got to climb all the way up, Queen of Sheba. And the Queen of Sheba came with many, many gifts. She did not come empty-handed to Solomon. She didn't enter the heart from the bottom, Kundalini. She didn't enter the heart with no gifts for the heart. She was pure and virtuous. And then she went up to Solomon, and the mind and heart complex is the soul of man. In fact, Aries, the Lamb of God, the cerebrum, and Leo, the lion, the lion heart of Leo. And those that's the path to heaven, in and up. Into the lion and up to the Lamb of God. Hiram Abif, the high ram above, builder of King Solomon's temple. So if you want to be a king and have a soul, this is our path. This is the right-hand path, because the Kundalini turns right-hand. The Kundabuffer is a left-hand turning serpent. And that's the one that catches all these young people in their teens and 20s and in their youth, that are polyamorous and just promiscuous and just anything goes, It's just drugs and sex and orgies and debauchery and degeneracy, and there they go, losing their soil, bad soil. Their soul becomes withered, as the soil does if you mistreat it. So this is why I was adamant in the early part of this that, I can't stand even just sharing a few lines of exchange with people who are closed-minded. I don't mind if they're open-minded and they haven't chosen either way which cosmology they believe, or whether they're astrologers or whether they're atheists or whatever, or whether they're eating meat. That's fine, but we're not. It's a different thing when people are teaching that these are ways to ascend, because they're not ways to ascend. It's in every scripture. They all concur that were written at a time when we were much more conscious, which warned us clearly which was the right way. And death and killing was out, always has been. Thou shalt not murder. And the Buddha said that even if you kill a fly, let alone eat it, you can sabotage your own path. You can be worthy of hell. And Bhagavad Gita says if you kill animals and eat them, you will be incarnated as an animal, you will be killed and eaten. So you should experience what you put an animal through. So that's why God gave us the fruits of the trees, as frugivores that we are. So it's not about, it's as you grow in your knowledge and expansion, these things will be automatic part of your life. You will not escape it. That's how the path will appear to you. It will be pure, it will be virtuous, and it will have all the right-hand paths of purity, telling truth to each other, being transparent, not lying, not cheating, not having false motives. Everything is pure, and everything is done right and correctly. There's a correct way and there's an incorrect way. The left-hand path is about chaos. And those who are on it are on the path to death, and it's only going to hurt them, It's only going to hurt them. This is only a call for everyone to either improve wherever they are or not descend. It's like a project. If you've got you're writing your biography, autobiography, and you've got a file, every day you reboot your computer, you reincarnate, and you would add to that book if you're going to get it out one day and publish it. You don't want to take away from it. You want to every day add and make it better, and then put it away every night when you turn the computer off, and make sure there's no viruses. You've got virus protection there, so that file doesn't get corrupted, because that's your autobiography. So then you're sleeping, and then the next day you wake up, reboot the computer, and you would be mad if you wiped all the content. Every day you just wiped it out and started again, and wiped it and started again. You would be just foolish. So that's the same with now. You would be foolish if you didn't want to get on the path of ascension, because ascension means to better yourself, to better oneself, to improve, to work on oneself, to not rest on their laurels, to not be lazy and slothful, because that's one of the 7 vices which leadeth to hell. And hell is a condition, remember that. And it's a condition that you bring and invite unto yourself. You don't go there. So going to hell means that you're going to in a conditional state. That's where you're descending to, because you have chosen lusts, and you've chosen to make your friends and your circle of friends all bad people. Because remember, paradosis is happening all the time. If you hang around with thieves, you'll become a thief. If you hang around with high elevated souls, paradosis will occur, where there's an exchange of consciousness. You receive, all of a sudden when you go to the guru and you touch his foot, you are now being blessed with his consciousness. That's all you are doing. You are entering their toroidal field, and paradosis is occurring. In Neoplatonism, this is where you have like a theurgy or a henosis. A theurgy is a merging, a yogic merging with the God, the monad, the Godhead, and you become one with God, and you are God. And that's how we are to descend, to ascend. But this path has been almost unreachable for some due to their very, very, very bad decisions to, go to the darkness. And so this is sad. I always speak to these people, and I always like to encourage the other people who are on the path. You know, I like to be very, very positive, but I also like to reprove. Not anyone directly at all, but I do use direct experiences, but I never would do that, because then that is their choice, and that is everybody's choice. But as a whole, scriptures admonish us to reprove, you know, the evil way, as the tribal clan mother would do if any of her in her clan started showing, you know, evil inclinations and bringing perversity into the clan. You know, she would have to sit down with them and discipline them and reprove them, because the unit cannot corrupt the collective. Be careful, and be careful of the yeast of the Pharisees, the scribes and the Pharisees. Do not, be careful of their fermented bread, their yeast, because this is their trickery, you see. And so,
you know, sorry, Santos, if I can interject for a sec. Again, this is you open the show about explaining to everyone about allegories, and I think it's just so important once again to just draw this out for everybody, to make this absolutely simple, the way that the Bible is supposed to be read and understood, very simply. But you have to understand that all of these ancient texts are not written literally, they're written allegorically, and everyone who wrote them and has been involved with the sacred text has always known this. And it's really only through the advent of organized society and organized religion that we have lost this very simple and basic understanding that these sacred texts are teaching allegories. These are fantastical tales, so that you won't forget them, that are teaching you the most important core basic lessons for your life. And you're giving all of these wonderful examples, and you just brought up yeast again, and the yeast of the Pharisees. All of this is an allegory for not using your left brain and not taking thought. And like we were talking on our podcast yesterday with Josh, about, you know, the truth about the vegan diet and veganism being pure and raw. And in the Bible, in Genesis 1:29, it tells you right at the beginning of this whole story, it tells you what your food is. And it's very plain, and it's very, very simple. And it is the seed-bearing fruits of the plants and the trees. Let that be thy food. But the thing that is confusing in a literalist world is that the Bible goes then in virtually every single book, Old Testament to New Testament, and goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on, how God is a horrific murderer, a jealous, vengeful God, and he's always corrupting innocent souls to partake in his evilness and his nastiness, to seek revenge and punish the unworthy or those that he perceives to be unworthy. And through the various examples in the Bible, there's so many times where it's blanket murder, blanket rape, regardless of innocent, 1-year-old, 2-year-old males of each household, and virtuous or non-virtuous woman to be taken and kept and raped. There's no love in that. There's no common sense in that. There's no, it's insanity. And and then you wonder how all of these literalist Christians wrap their head around, it's all about God, it's all about Jesus and the Bible is just wonderful, and everything's just so great, but it's just filled with murder, and rape and torture of innocent people. How do you wrap your head around that, people? The reason that the book is filled with these tales, and that these tales are constantly referring to two things: animals, in particular beasts, and children, because both of these are powerful allegories. They're not literalist statements. God is not, he created everything. He doesn't murder his creation. This is insanity. The reason that the Bible uses these two examples again and again and again is because we must kill the beast. We must kill the animal. We must kill the beast that lives below 7th Avenue. 7th Avenue being your superhighway of the chakras within you, below the Muladhara, at the root or the base of your torso, is hell upon earth. And that is where the carnal beast within you, and it's within all of us, exists. And that's what must be killed. And when the Bible talks about killing children, or killing the eldest male of each household, it's an allegory for not taking thought, because children in the Bible are the fruition out of the seed of thought. So when you think for yourself, this is why we fell out of the singularity, perfect balance and harmony with God in heaven, into this dualistic, polaristic, insane world that nobody understands because it didn't come with a manual. We've fallen into this state because we took thought for ourselves. I can do this. God's been doing a great job. I love my life. It's fantastic. But I talked to this snake and it said, I can think for myself. And that's the metaphor, the representation of biting from the apple of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It's thinking for yourself. Take no thought, Jesus says. And then the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, is an endless stream of allegories for not taking thought. The book of Joshua, chapter 6, and Joshua in the city of Jericho. Jericho is the third ventricle of your brain. And all of the references of the number 7 in this chapter of the book of Joshua is all 7 is God intervention. And this is taking steps to take back the kingdom, because as it says, the very first line in Joshua chapter 6 in Jericho is that the city was shut. All the children of Israel were shut in. None entered and none could leave. And that is the state of man in our fallen state, which is living out of the left brain. And where everything in society teaches you to take thought. Schools teach you to take thought. Think for yourself. Everything, movies, television, and of course the worst offender of all is organized religion. Organized religion has literally got 99.9% of all of the adults that partake in this thing they think is Christianity, which, if it's a Western tradition, it's not. But they think they're participating in Christianity, and they've got 99.9% of all of these so-called Christians actually believing that their beloved God of creation, of love and kindness and patience and generosity and wisdom, is an evil murderer and rapist. How does this happen? Because you're literally allowing somebody to put their thoughts into your head, and you accept without doing any research for yourself. You simply accept what it is that they tell you that these ancient texts mean, and then you go about your business quite happily, because what they tell you is, as long as you pay us 10% of your wealth, trust me, there is a card with your name on it, and you're getting out of hell because you're a good Christian. So you can sin by taking thought and ripping off your business partner and your neighbor and cheating on your wife and living a sinful, 7 deadly sinful life. And it doesn't matter because you've signed a card with the church, and the church says because you pay 10% of your physical wealth, you're going to heaven. That is fucked up. That is completely upside down. And it's all caused because of one thing. The ancients wrote all of their gnosis and wisdom in allegorical tales, metaphors. If you don't know what those words mean, look them up. Look them up for yourself. That's how everything was handed down to us, so that it can't be obfuscated. As long as you know that it's an allegory, even the simplest of us can figure out all of these allegories. They're actually quite simple, as long as you understand it's not a literal story. And that's what the Bible talks about. Old Testament, New Testament, every single book, every single chapter, take no thought. Because the fallen man, the prodigal son, who gets bored living a virtuous life on the homestead, is the one who listened to the talking snake and said, hey, you can do this for yourself. Be your own man, do your own thing, and go out there and, cut your own path in this world. And eventually it all leads to that big wide path that the many take, that leads to the precipice, instead of the right-hand path, which is straight, which is narrow, and is, like Santos said, is constantly ascending up and to the right, up and to the right. If you want to catch wisdom, cast thy net to the right. And one other point I just wanted to bring up before I pass it back over to you, Santos. You were talking about the example of Leo and essentially the tail. And take a look at the Great Pyramids of Giza, and just to the right is the Great Sphinx by the 3 Great Pyramids of Giza. And if you look at it, what are you seeing? You're seeing that the Sphinx is a double creation. So at the front, you have a representation of the constellation Virgo, and at the back, you see the tail of the lion, so that's Leo. And the whole point of this is everything is so perfectly symbolic, and it makes total sense, and therefore that's your path. These are your teachings, and you follow them. Virgo is from the Virgin. Virgin simply means take no thought. The pureness of the mind who has never left the singularity of heaven with God, which is allowing God to create. There's nothing new under the sun, so why would we even take thought? Just enjoy this abundant, eternal, beautiful, perfect creation. That's Virgo. And she comes first at the head. And to get to the lion and to become the Lion King and ascend up, you have to go through all of the other constellations before you come all the way back around to the tail of Leo. And so what this is telling us is that when we do leave the womb of the Sacred Mother, the Virgin Mother, of taking no thought, and we begin thinking for ourselves, we have to go through the Great Wheel, and we have to go through the 12 constellations, constantly figuring out that every time we think, we create problems, and then we try to think our way out of problems, only making them worse, before we come all the way back around to true wisdom. And I'm going to, just as I pass it back over to you, leave everyone with this. Remember, quite literally, we all live on the ground floor. The rich and the elite, they take all the houses that are up on the mountaintops, and they live in the penthouses of the skyscrapers and whatnot, and we're shoved into basements, subterranean places, or on the first or second floor. And this is for a reason, and this is an allegory and can be taken quite literally as well. And that is that down on the valley floor, you have no perspective. And if you're constantly taking thought and making decisions for yourself, how do you expect any of them to come out righteous or to come out perfect when you have no idea what is over the ridge that's 300 feet down the road in front of you? If you can't see beyond the tip of your nose, then you have no perspective. If you have no perspective, you have no hope of making a righteous decision or a wise decision. Wisdom comes from casting thy net to the right, because right is up and to the right. It's always up. It's always ascending, because when we ascend through rapture, when we become passionate with God's creation and reap the passion of God, then we ascend. And as we ascend, we see over that ridge and you go, my goodness, I had no idea. There's another little town over there and they've got a river that would be so helpful in our life. I had no idea. I was here for 30, 40 years. I had no idea. Exactly. It's a metaphor, perfect metaphor for when we take thought for ourselves. We have no wisdom, we have no perspective, and yet here we are thrown into this grand game with no rule book, with no instruction, and the instruction that we do get is just completely upside down lies. And then they tell you have to fend for yourself and you got to think for yourself. And every decision we make is the wrong one because we have no perspective. Sorry for the length of that, Santos, but it just hits to the heart of what the problem is with organized society. Everybody thinks that these ancient texts are all literal, and they're not. They're allegorical tales about left brain, right brain. Everything in our reality is a left brain versus right brain issue. If you haven't figured that out yet, you better, and in a hurry. Sorry, Santos. Back over to you.
Yeah, we could have a break. I was thinking of going straight through.
I'm totally good.
Okay. We'll address those. All right. So, what was your subject then? Again, I want to continue with that. Just quickly.
Again, everything is an allegorical tale about taking no thought. The virgin is the one who takes no thought.
Mm-hmm. So left brain, right brain, that was the thought I was going to go with. So this is where many people get confused. The left brain is pulling them into worldly thinking. That's the left. That's the goat brain. The right brain is the sheep. That's the true representative of the cerebrum, Sarah Abram, the slayer of the ram. So what you have is the left brain is where people are. They think they've ascended to the right brain, but this is too high of a state for them. And what happens is they have like a false baptism, a false syncretism experience. It's not genuine, it's not rooted, like the seeds that grow on the path. It can't find root. It grows quickly. There's a lot of potential, and it's very precocious and it's very energized, but it's got no wind in its sail. It withers very quickly and goes back to a former state, you see. So this is why we have to be on the alert, and I'm always on the guard for this and always, diligent in, in expressing it, because we live in a very, very dangerous world, and I've seen a lot of good people fall off the path. I've seen a lot of people join, and that's good. But how can you go back to the vomit of the world? How can you go back to a former state? Well, there's only one way, and that's that you didn't have the substance in the first place. It was all hypocrisy, or it was all just superficial. It couldn't find root in the good soil. So it's very important to also be serious when we're, considering the subject of ascension and how to walk this path, and how to be get the rewards, because every action has a compensation. Every expression of energy, every time you express a sensation, it's like you are expelling energy, and hence, in a sense, you are dying. Every time you have a sensational experience. This is why the hermit and the guru and the master, the sensei, the sannyas, he withdraws. He withdraws from the world. He's conquered the world. He doesn't need to go out there and get famous, and entertain all the all the people who are basically all on the left-hand path. There's not many right-hand paths out there that you're entertaining. I've been in the music industry and I know, there's only one or two. All the rest of them, they ain't going nowhere. So pretty soon I got bored with that and realised that, no, I'm not going to do entertainment. No, thank you. I'm not going to play the guitar for a bunch of monkeys anymore. I'm going to teach them syncretism instead and give them fish rather than teach them how to fish rather than give them fish, and rather than tickle their ears. So I switched over straight away. I saw through that. There's nothing there. There's only a bunch of pedophiles who run the music industry who look after each other, and all the people that come to your gigs, they're not listening anyway. They just like to hit one like a little monkey. Good on you, entertaining monkey. Oh, you play the guitar so well. You've got such a beautiful voice and pretty eyes. Thank you. And then they're off going home, ejaculating their brains out anyway and eating all kinds of burnt holocaust for their diet and think that they're ascending. So this is what paradosis means, to encircle yourself with a good, strong body of like-minded people and have them surround you and be your circle. This is your circle, your table of King Arthur. Why do you surround yourself with a bunch of fools? A bunch of people who love exploiting animals and murdering their asses and eating them, and they love just being alcoholics and just drunkard and demonic all the time. That's how I've heard someone describe a friend that they have now since they left syncretism. Demonic and a drunk. So you're only as good as the circle of people around you, no matter how intellectual and woke they think they are, and they smoke cannabis and they're cool, and liberal with sex and what have you, they're still on the left-hand path of perdition and damnation. You can't, make up the rules as you go. You're not going to escape it. And this is it. This is how people, they expose their hypocrisy, really, because you just look at their friends. Show me your friends and I'll tell you who you are, because birds of a feather flock together. You can't have degenerate friends and then, come out and, I want to talk about consciousness and how to expand your consciousness, and it's just childish. It's really, really a circus. It's entertainment, but it's not, coming from deep roots. So this is why we have to not soil the soul with bad soil, but we have to, or spoil the soul with bad oil, but we need to make it fertile in goodness and purity. Purity, goodness, those are the real virtues that cannot be exchanged for any other thing, nor pleasure, nor vice, nor anything, and those are the things which make us endure till the end. Integrity, faithfulness and loyalty until the end, We swear that. It's funny how some people, they swear an undying love for someone or something, and the next thing you know, they've given that love to someone else, just like that, or they've, gone to the left-hand path just like that, as if the right-hand path doesn't even exist anymore, So this is how it goes. It goes that where we are in our, if we've reached not a condition, but a status, a state, then we are worthy of it. A good doctor is good because he did his studies and he graduated with really, really high grades. You can't blame the university if you didn't graduate because you were too lazy to study. You can't blame the box office guy if he kicks you back because you've only got half the amount of money to buy a ticket to go to see the film. And you can't say that you haven't been warned about the foolish virgins and the wise virgins and about buying gold from me so you can be saved. I love that scripture. Let's have a look at that. I want to talk about that because it has three aspects of it that are in the song Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah.
Buy gold from me. So, buy gold from me. So here we go, Revelation 3:18. I counsel you to buy from me gold refined, so you can become rich, and white clothes to wear, so you can cover your shameful nakedness, and salve to put on your eyes, so you can see. See, this is not a literal man telling all his followers, what to do and being dogmatic. This is parable. This relates to everybody. It's in this. It's also in the song Stairway to Heaven. She's buying a stairway to heaven so she can become rich, and she doesn't, she doesn't get delusional, as it says in the start of the song. There are two paths you can go by. She wants to be sure, so she's buying a stairway to heaven. You have to be sure about where you're putting your money, where you're putting your efforts, where you're putting your interests, your time, your friends that you're hanging out with. And buy white clothes to wear so you can cover your shameful nakedness. You're naked. You've jumped off the syncretism chart totally. You're totally ashamed of it now. Can't even mention the word. And you're naked. You've been exposed. There's no more syncretism now, just darkness. And salve to put on your eyes so you can see. Oh, please don't go teaching if you can't see yourself. Please stop it. It's embarrassing. You have to be living the life. You can't be practicing shameful nakedness and pornography and promiscuity, ejaculatory, black, tantric, drugged out sex, and be teaching about ascension and expansion. No, you can't do that. It's funny. It's a comedy act. It's entertainment. Don't do it. So we have to have we have to be living it. We have to be actually doing it and not being ashamed of it. So I see a lot of people who want to be teachers, but they're all just specialising in their little gimmick, oh, this trick, have a listen to this, I've discovered something. No, everything has to be syncretic now because that's how the mind is going. We have to, syncretism must be the key word, not even astrology, it's syncretism. Otherwise you're just dividing more and putting more poo in the puddle. We don't need more muddying of the puddle. We need syncretists to teach the syncretic model, and it's the etymological model and the astrological model. Those three go together. You can't have any other model. You can't be talking about anything else, just a waste of time. This ascension process is all there is in white tantra and purity, and how to make a better world. Because what we're doing is, if we're not carrying our weight, we're just asking for more vicious and evil and nasty demonic cycles of reincarnation, eating and pooing and buying and selling and entertaining people at the local cafe, because you're the best singer around. And, you're just entertaining a bunch of monkeys, and they're not thankful at all. They don't remember you when they go home to bed to their own worries. That's how they treat people in Hollywood. The successful people who success, and they're full of cess, and they literally do sexual favours, sodomy, bestiality, and they get to the top all right, and you want to entertain these people or be with them and be popular. No, thank you. No, don't seek popularity in this world, because it's not going to come. But you'll seek for it and you won't get it. It'll never be popular when you seek popularity. If you want to be doing the right thing and teaching syncretism, then you will be, both hated and loved, but not just, superficially cheered and patted on the back, for false achievements and underachieving. So this is our opportunity, and it's serious. It's not a game, and it's awful when you see people fall off the path because they just all they do is put smear a shit stain all over syncretism and really make it look despicable and like it's just debauchery and it doesn't mean much. You see a lot of people who talk a lot of talk, but their walk is just really it's just pathetic. Really, it's sad, and I don't see a lot of it, but it happens, and this is what we need to be really careful of, and to protect the fold. He who tries to come into the fold by the wrong door. Let me see that scripture. This is a very careful warning. So you would know the scripture. Let's have a look then. So truly I say, whoever does not enter the door or the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in by some other way, is a thief and a robber. Here's another version. I tell you the truth, anyone who sneaks over the wall of the sheepfold rather than going through the gate must surely be a thief and a robber. So you see these so-called Mayavadi left-hand path livers and pretend to be right-hand path teachers. They are thieves and they're robbers, and they just expose themselves. This is the sad part of this whole thing, where the self-deluded people are pronouncing themselves, teachers and gurus, etc. So we need to be careful, because that is another demonic thing we are battling. And so the Good Shepherd always warns the flock about this, and that's why part of our teaching is very important to guard the treasures that we have. There's always a guard at the castle, and the castle is your soul, and you always have a guard who is on guard. You don't want a guard like in the life of in the Quest of the Holy Grail by Monty Python, where the guard was guarding the other guard, and he says, no, you got to guard, and he repeatedly had to. If you've got a guard that's falling asleep and you're not on guard against the false teachers that are coming in and the self-deceived who are trying to deceive others, this is tantamount to folly, and it can be very harmful on the soul. So the right-hand path and the left-hand path. This is not a game. Well, you could call it a game. Yep. If you want to be frivolous and light-hearted and footloose and fancy-free, that's cool. You can call it a game, because you will be playing the game, and it will be Russian roulette, and you do not know what's around the corner, dear ones. You do not know what hell could be around the corner when you're playing dangerously on the left-hand path, because there's always going to be more pleasures and more gains on the material level, but way many more pains. Pain after pain and torture and torment forever and ever and ever. And there's no getting out of it, and there's only one way, the way of purity, to have bliss and to have contentment and to have intelligence and to live the path honestly, with integrity, and do practice what you preach. You have to actually practice it. It's got to be a practice. And I see a lot of people are very noisy. They're not stilled. Stillness has to be your whole way of being. And generally you can't really find that when you're out there all the time and not doing meditation and yoga and just living a way which is the standard way of life, the standardized diet. So be careful of the yeast of the Pharisees and the false shepherds. You see, I tell you truly, verily I tell you, Pharisees. He was talking to the Pharisees, right? A Pharisee is a hypocrite. It's like the Farsis, the Persians. You know, when they descended. All religions at their source, at their books, are literary and true, but religions become literal and false. And so they are the Pharisees means to be false, right? So very truly I tell you, Pharisees, anyone who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in some other way, is a thief and a robber. So, you know, we want to be, if we're going to be preaching and teaching, we're going to be walking too. You know, there has to be some walk and no hypocrisy. You know, I see people who are talking about ascension and their partners are, well, drug addicts, pharmaceutical drug addicts, alcoholics, and all their friends are demons and alcoholics and left-hand pathers and promiscuous and bisexual and all kinds of upside down stuff, whereas the scriptures are actually telling us how we must, if we're preaching, we must have around us, we must have that lifestyle. You can't have the left-hand path lifestyle and be teaching the right-hand path. It's you're naked. You're out there naked and exposed, and you're looking ridiculous if you're trying to do that. And that's what I see a lot of people doing. And well, I like to say to people, just stay close to my channel, please. Stay close, because you'll get what you'll get all the protocols and all the truths, and understand how the truth and how to practice, and the true syncretism. Best word. No need to be ashamed of syncretism. No. The moment you do that, you're showing who you really are. You're showing that you are a divide and conqueror, a chaos individual, not a uniter. That's the satanic mode. You know, that's when Saturn is strong in your chart, you know, and you're letting that evil Saturn manipulate you on the left-hand path. You just can't do that. So purity and a good word that I'm learning a lot from a wonderful lady in my life recently. She likes to say transparency, and I'm learning a lot about transparency. It's a very, very beautiful word. Honesty, and not deceiving. You know, people saying you're something when you're not. You know, it's not transparent, and it's not very friendly. It's not very polite, and it's not the way to behave. So dignity is what ennobles an individual. To have dignity, to be respectful, and to treat your friends really, really, and everyone really, really kindly. And things like courtesy is very, very important. And so transparency is where the life you live is exactly the same as the life you present on, in the public. And I've always been honest about myself. I've been honest about where I've been neglectful and how I live my life. It's impressive to me how many people still question me as to whether I will eat fish, for instance. I'll be sitting there sometimes with some people, and they'll say, like, so you won't have any fish then? And I'll return to them that, well, I'm vegan. That's what I teach, right? So I'm vegan. And then what about, so not even like cheese and no dairy, you'll never drink some milk and a bit of beef, just, if you need iron. No, I'm vegan. That's what I am. See, what comes out of my mouth is what I am. I am that. So it's very, very sad to see people who are confused about what they're practicing, what they say who they are, when they're clearly not. And so this is where deception comes in, and that's, you've got to be careful of the leaven of the Pharisee. because false doctrines will creep in. They'll start saying things like, oh, it's okay, you will ascend if you have flesh. And it's okay if you have a bit of black tantra every now and then, as long as you always go back to the white and have a little bit of grey and promiscuity and multiple partners, and it's okay to share DNA and parasites and hormones and ancestral DNA codons with your polyamorous partners, and to give your DNA to further other partners once they leave you, and you don't know where your DNA is going next. It's going to drunks. I've seen my DNA go from me through a partner to a drunkard, a bum. I've seen that happen to me, and so watch it. Watch who you go kissing, and certainly don't give them any of your seminal fluids. Keep that stuff to yourself, folks. That's your tree of life. That's your nourishment. That's how you keep, activating on the path of ascension. So very, very careful, the sexual aspect of ascending. And, you don't want to be practicing debauched left-hand part sex and teaching ascension and expansion when you're simply not doing it. It doesn't work. All right, over to you, brother.
Great stuff. And, when you're talking about watch out for the leaven of organized religion, remember there are three components to or three members or role players within organized religion. There are the scribes, and all the scribes do is they write down the records, but they're told what to write down. The Pharisees, and you aptly describe them as the falsehoods, the Pharisees are the ones that stand up in front of the masses and tell these written words by the scribes. Those are the Pharisees. But it's the lawyers that are the ones that tell the scribes what to write down, and then the Pharisees read the words that the lawyers tell the scribes to write down. So again, behind organized religion are lawyers. That's where the term lawyer comes from. And that is the unholy trinity of organized religion, which is lies top to bottom. And you were talking about a great word that you've embraced recently, which is transparency. Transparency is illumination, and when you live a transparent life, like Santos described, a syncretic life, all is attuned, and that you are following this path of righteousness, which is virtuous, that this transparency becomes you, because the truth is holistic, and it's both physical and it's metaphysical. So what you begin to do within you, what ends up happening, it has to manifest outside of you. So if you're taking only virtuous thoughts, and if you're leading from within a virtuous lifestyle, then you have to mimic that, because we always are in a precise match when we look in the mirror to our soul, to where we stand metaphysically. There's always a direct correlation between the two. And these words are all holistic. So, for example, when you're transparent, you become luminescent, and that is illuminated. And the thing about luminescence is that you're filled with light. And then the word rapture and becoming rapturous comes into play, because remember, the word light is a holistic word. You have to understand it in all aspects. So we often only ever think of light as opposed to darkness. But remember, light is also as opposed to heavy. And when you become transparent and you are filled with luminescence, you become light in every sense of the word, and you begin to rise. And as we discussed earlier, when you begin to rise, you are given an instant gift of living on this flat plane, and that's instantly perspective. As soon as you get even 50 feet or 100 feet up off the ground, everything begins to look radically different. And that's just by gaining perspective. And to gain perspective, you have to be filled with light. So that again takes us back to the Bible and a passage like, cast thy net to the right. That's what's being said. And Pisces, which is preceding Aries, is in preparation for man arising each and every day. Of course, the sun rises, but the beginning of each year is also in Aries on the 6 p.m. March 21st, and of course the first sunrise 6 a.m. 12 hours later, 1 plus 2 is 3. 6 a.m. March 21st becomes the first sunrise. And so you have to cast your net to the right to capture the wisdom of the right-hand path, to be ready for the gifts that are given on the level. So as soon as the sun begins to rise on the first day of the year, which we're told this is just the first day of spring, the level rays from the sun across the flat earth are on the level. And everything that's on the level is the truth. That's where that allegory comes from. So everything that's level is truthful. That's why the earth is flat. And you have to have perspective to be able to see the sun. And the sun rises and it sets. And you have to have perspective to be able to see these things. And that's casting thy net to the right. So again, you just see everywhere the allegories within the Bible are all just human physiology and powerful messages teaching us to be a certain way. And you also mentioned, of course, the absolute, one of the greatest songs ever written, Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven. And you're talking about the significance of the lyrics in the song by Robert Plant. In that first verse, at the bottom half of the verse, after it talks the first part of the duality, the materialistic plane of there's a lady, and she's buying a stairway to heaven. The second half of that first verse is the dualistic nature of our reality. There's a sign on the wall, but she wants to be sure. Because sometimes words have two meanings. In a tree, by the brook, there's a songbird who sings. Sometimes all of our thoughts are misgiven. And so what they're telling you in plain sight is that all of our ancient teachings are all couched in allegory, and that they have two meanings, dualistic meanings. They have a surface entry-level meaning, and then they have a higher meaning. How do you know that that's what they're saying? Well, in a tree, which is growing high and therefore has perspective, by the brook, a river, a rivulet, water that separates. So there's a piece of land to one side, the left, and there's a piece of land to the right side of the river or brook, and the right side, left hemisphere of the brain, right hemisphere of the brain. So the brook is the horizontal divide of the brain. And in a tree, by the brook, there's a songbird who sings. Have you ever looked at a picture of what's inside of your head? If you look at a cross-section of the human brain, you will see the songbird who sings. Horus, Amun-Ra, the bird head of God. And you will literally physically see the bird head within you, which is an allegory, a representation, and a powerful message of the higher songs we sing in pursuit of God, or when we reach out and reach up to God in blue shift, up and into heaven upon earth. And sometimes all our thoughts are misgiven, Absolutely. If you choose not to see these things, if you choose not to do the research and dig a little deeper into Led Zeppelin's lyrics, for example, and you choose not to do the work and you stay ignorant of the songbird who sings in the tree, then you stay on the left-hand side of the brook or the river. And sometimes all our thoughts are misgiven. When you stay on the left side because you're fearful or lazy, slothful to do the work and to elevate yourself, then your rewards are built in. The rewards in your life can never be blamed upon anyone else. You get what you've earned, because no matter what work you do, a shoddy job, a lazy, slothful job, the rewards are built into the work. And when you do diligent work, when you do righteous work, the rewards, again, are built into the work. So whatever you put in, you get out. That's where these dark sayings, these age-old axioms that are timeless, always stay with us. They always stay with us, and they always will, because they're giving us a basic understanding of who we are from the inside out. And before I just pass it back over, I'm just going to leave my part today with this wonderful little allegory about the ancient city of Jerusalem and its east gate. The east gate of the ancient city of Jerusalem was always known as the gate of the eye of the needle. And this is where this old dark saying comes from, that it's easier to get a camel through the eye of the needle than it is a rich man into heaven, and here's why. This eastern gate, the gate coming from the east, from Aries arising into Jerusalem, the holy city. Jerusalem is merely an allegory, just like Jericho is for the third ventricle of your brain. To get in, you must pass through this straight and narrow way, which is the gate of the eye of a needle. And the header of the gate was so low that the only way for a camel to be able, the camel of a trader or a journeyer or a traveler to get into Jerusalem, was that the camel had to get upon its knees and bow its head to the ground. And then its load had to be taken off, its fanny. The load of the camel had to be removed. And then, and only then, were the camel and the rider able to enter through the gate of the eye of a needle. And the parable in this tale is this, that it is only the penitent man, one who is humble before God, that may enter into heaven upon earth, which is the city of Jerusalem, which is Jericho, which is the third ventricle of your brain, which is the very center, innermost place of the human brain. And a rich man will never ever achieve this heaven, because a rich man will never ever ever show deference to God, will never remove his load, because he's worked a lifetime. He's worked 40 lifetimes working through the desert to build and amass his materialistic fortune. This has to be real. What did Bill Hicks say? This has to be real. Look at my large bank account. Look at my wallet filled with money. Look at my big family. This has to be real. And that's why the material plane, the left-hand path, will only, which is wide and beautifully paved, will only ever lead you to one place, and that's a precipice. And you won't realize it's a precipice until you've taken one too many steps and you've fallen over the brink, and then around and around and around you go. But the path that is straight and narrow leads upwards and to the right, and it requires penitence, humility, and humbleness before God, which is a virtue. So with that, I'll pass it back over to you, Santos. Thank you.
Yeah, great. So the lyrics are all packed with alchemical truths. It's a bomb. Like it's just so explosive. There's a lady who's sure all that glitters is gold. So she knows that there is such a thing as substance, as gold, as saving the chrism, as being pure, and it's like gold, you know. So she's buying a stairway to heaven. She's not slothful. She's not a little whore on the left-hand path. When she gets there, she knows if the stores are all closed, with one word she can get what she came for. So she knows that if the groom is not there, she can wait. She's got plenty of oil, and she knows the word. She knows that she's done and fulfilled the word, so she can get the bridegroom whenever she wants. She's a good virgin.
Exactly.
And she's buying a stairway to heaven. There you go. She's very, very industrious. She's not, you know, thinking, but let's, you know, linger in this world and entertain people and keep them, you know, and just do whatever comes in our fleeting experience, and let's just drift with the wind, shall we? No, she was serious. She's buying a stairway to heaven, living it. There's a sign on the wall, but she wants to be sure, because, you know, sometimes words have two meanings. So they don't go listening to the left and the right. You know, the right says, vegetarian is the path. And the left says, you can have a little bit of murdered carcass. It's putrefying. It's acidifying and cancerous. But you go ahead and do that, and it'll prevent you from ascending, but it's good for you because it's got protein. Or you'll have the right-hand path of telling you to save the chrism and your charisma, and to go to the seminary and learn what to do with your semen, rather than squandering with all the harlots and all the prostitutes who love the squandering of the Christ. They love it. They delight in it. They're just absolutely thrilled when they see all this ejaculating all around the place. It pleases them. So no, because this one knows this is a wise woman, and she's not going to be fooled by the left-hand path. She'll always stay true to syncretism, always, no matter what, and her partner, no matter what. Cause, you know, sometimes words have two meanings. In a tree by the brook, like you said, the brook, you see, the little tree, the Taurus field, the tree of life. There's a songbird who sings, sometimes all of our thoughts are misgiving. So again, you see, thinking and having misgivings is because of, you know, the left-hand brain and going on the left, the sinner, the sinister. There's a feeling I get when I look to the west and my spirit is crying for leaving. Westing is dying, so he's crying to leave the material, poor, impoverished state of the left-hand pather, and he's seeking the rings of smoke. In his thoughts, he has seen rings of smoke through the trees and the voices of those who stand looking. Of course, the witnesser is always there looking, and he's always looking and waiting for us to respond to their calling, to rise above the lusts and to be a warrior and stand firm and endure until the end, and not take a brief coffee break time off because you need it. And it's whispered that soon, if we all call the tune, then the piper will lead us to reason. The tune is one tune. It's the tune. It's not tunes and songs and entertainings. It's a tune. And the pipe is the true pineal gland that will lead us to reason. And a new day will dawn for those who stand long. You have to endure. And then the forest will echo with laughter rather than slaughter. Just put an S in front of slaughter. And those who are in the world of slaughter are the ones who are slaughtering the Christ process and abandoning the right-hand path and just living in squander and squalor. If there's a bustle in your hedgerow, don't be alarmed now. It's just the spring clean for the May Queen. You see, spring clean is every year. You are cleansing your heart. You are blossoming for the May Queen. You are becoming regal and royal because you are now, listening to the higher mind. Yes, there are two paths you can go by, but in the long run, there's still time to change the road you're on, and it makes me wonder. So again, planting the seed of doubt and the seed of hope at the same time. Which one? Sometimes people, they're right there at the decision-making process. Should I go down the right-hand path or should I take the left-hand path? should I leave syncretism for the left or should I? Oh, and then bang, they make a decision based on lust and, greed, stupidity, and just general abandonment because of no soul force, very little soul force, like the chaff blowing in the wind, like the seed planted by the roadside. Your head is humming and it won't go. In case you don't know, the piper's calling you to join him. So no matter when you go on the left-hand path, you can still never unlearn and unknow what you learnt on the right-hand path. So you're being tortured and tormented forever, and the piper's calling you to join him. In other words, unless you go with the piper, your head will be humming. You'll always be delusional and always guilty, and you'll always have that dread over you because you're not on the path. Dear lady, can you hear the wind blow? And did you know the stairway lies on the whispering wind? The whispering wind is the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is leading us, and it's leading us upward. The demonic spirit is leading us downward through our friends and our partners and the people who are around us, the drunks, the alcoholics, and the people who are definitely ejaculating, like there's no doubt about it, because they've got no brains left, they're empty-headed. They don't know the truth. They don't even know the cosmology where they're living. That's stupid. And as we wind down the road, our shadows taller than our soul, there walks a lady we all know who shines white light and wants to show. This is the true ones. How everything is still turns to gold. And if you listen very hard, the tune will come to you at last when all are one and one is all. To be a rock and not to roll. This is what the rollers do, they roll around. Oh, here's another polyamorous, who knows what kind of sexual orientation experience I'm going to have. I'm going out to the music bar and picking up a guy because he's handsome and a girl and whatever other DNA. It's so toxic, but this is the pure one. She winds on down the road and her shadow is taller than her soul. And that lady, we all know that lady. That's the Madonna. She's pure. She's a virgin. She's not a whore. And we listen to the virgin and we follow her unto heaven. She takes us through the foramen magnus, which is at the bottom of the skull, where the cerebrospinal fluids ascend up the spine. The spinal column is there also holding it. And the esophagus is breathing. The Holy Spirit is going through that channel as well. And through that foramen magnum, we go through the Virgin. That's the portal in the neck of the Virgin, which takes us unto heaven. And we listen to that lady, and she wants to show how everything still turns to gold. You have to listen hard, and that tune will come to you at last. So that's to anyone who's out there and who have mired themselves in the mud, and they want to repent and come back. It's always time, and you will wash your clothes, your white linen of all the stains, and you will perfect yourself and make eventually a book, the book of life. And that file that you have when you're writing your autobiography, and every day you're improving and adding to it, one day that will be a book. And it will be in heaven, it will be everlasting, and it will in time, and it will be infinite in space. So that's it. We've come right to the top of the hour, and I'll just really see you off. Charlie, I'm coming around to your place anyway after this, a 5-minute ride on my bike, and I'm going to try and do a live there about your 25 vegan dogs. This is for all the people out there who think their dog needs meat, my breed dog needs meat. Well, no, they don't. They can be vegan, and it's easy to do, and probably we can give them a few tips as to how to do that. So look out for that live on Facebook. And thanks, listeners, to People for People Radio. Please share the links, share the how they can support and help get PBS out to as many people as possible. So once again, Charlie, thank you, and appreciate your sharing.
Oh, you're so welcome, my friend. It just a great show, and again, I love sharing in your gnosis. Thank you so much.
Likewise, brother. So all the best for the week, and we'll see you next week with a guest. And that will be, I forget her name.